Hello and welcome to another episode of the Midierror Meets podcast, the deceptively monthly music podcast where we speak to a wide range of people from the music industry. I'm speaking to Tim Exile this month, which is a huge honour. He's a musician, a performer, improv superstar, sometimes singer, key masher, and all-round top bloke from the future. Tim has worked on a huge number of projects. He's released his own software. He performs on a piece of software he built back in 1066. And he's worked with a huge range of artists, released on some huge record labels, and continues to perform live and entertain and delight his audiences. So, I caught up with Tim earlier on this year in his London home, Londinium, and we spoke about his career and his influences, and this is sort of the unedited version of what happened. Tim Exile, thank you very much for coming on my podcast and letting me around your house.
Mr. Midierror, you're very welcome. Thank you for coming around to my house.
Thank you very much indeed. It's great to talk to you.
It's great, yeah.
Despite the technical errors that are already incurred. Yeah, so it'd be good to talk to you about where music started for you and your early memories of music.
So, there were early stories, kind of pre-memory, that my mum tells me, apparently. So, I grew up in this little house out in the middle of the countryside in the Cotswolds, or the Knotswolds, as I was described. It's not quite the Cotswolds. It was, this old farmhouse, small old farmhouse, and with a road going past it, and I used to sit there and just get mesmerised by the sound of cars going past, and really? I think it was like an AV show for little kids, and I think it was just mesmerised by the sound, and I still remember that sound because it was in a valley, and the road would kind of go up and down hills, so you get this weird sort of phasing effect as the cars would disappear. It's really kind of ethereal. I mean, you could imagine it being used in some kind of like track on erased tapes or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's more of a story than a memory. But another story my mum tells me is, so I played the violin. That was basically the first thing. So apparently I brought a letter home from school, age 4, that said, in that funny kind of like copier ink that really sort of faded but blue. I don't know. I'm old.
Oh, like a carbon.
Yeah, carbon copy. Yeah, one of those carbon copy things.
No,
yeah.
That is.
And it was something like,
old as well.
"Does your son?" Yeah, the old gang. It was like, "Would your son like to play the violin?" And she sort of opened it and looked at me and said, "You don't want to play the violin, do you?" Because apparently I'd just say no to everything. Do you want to do this? No. Do you want to do that? No. Don't want to do that. And I was just like, yeah, hell yeah, I want to play the violin.
Nice.
So I learnt to play the violin for a bit. I think it was probably quite quickly got into like the reality of the scenario that is. I think what I wanted was I didn't want to learn to play the violin. I just wanted to be able to play the violin.
Right. Yeah, I can understand that. Definitely.
So I think the learning part of it became pulling teeth, but I did stick with it. Until I was about 18 and was sort of cut from the apron strings and didn't have to there was no pressure to play the violin anymore. But so did that kind of on and off. Fought with my violin teacher, and my parents' musical interests are, I mean, with a few exceptions, basically stop at the sort of the turn of the 1900s. So I'd never really heard any kind of like pop music at all until I was 11.
Absolutely, my parents are the same. It's all
right.
Medieval music is what I hear when I go back to my
right. Yeah, and it's great. I mean, it's such great stuff. But it's kind of, in a way, it's sort of when I did. Well, the first thing I kind of like, discovered in inverted commas, because everybody was discovering at the time was grunge and Nirvana and also some of like the indie stuff. When I was 11, I was just like, oh my god, this is amazing. And there was a band like some of the sixth formers. I don't know what it is, year 12 these days in real terms, but anyway, they were sixth formers back then, and they had this band. They were called the Trivial Things, and I went to a Trivial Things concert, And they'd like hide in it was in the school hall, but they'd hide in like a proper decent sound system and a sound engineer, and it was proper loud. And it was the first time I'd heard music any louder than like 75 dB, and I was just like, just complete like neurological fry up. Yeah. And then shortly about sort of 6 to 12 months after that, someone handed me like a bootleg rave tape, and then I was just like, wow, this, it doesn't. What are these instruments? I just heard, I'd heard about raves and I'd heard about this whole thing, and I had no, the context in my mind was just completely imaginary. I had no real frame of reference for like what rave or the rave scene was like. So I built this kind of like mythical utopia basically around this sort of sonic world. But it was just like, as soon as I heard that stuff, I'd say, yeah, this is my life. Like whatever my life is going to be about is going to be something to do with this stuff.
Wow, that's an important tape. Do you remember who gave it you or how it...
Yeah, well...
Who was on it, maybe?
It was... a guy in my class, a friend of mine called Matt Hall, had an older brother, quite a bit older, Stu, who was a DJ, or had some decks. I mean, basically when you're at school, you're not really a DJ, you just have some decks.
Yeah.
But
you are in your head. You're
in your head, you're a superstar DJ. Yeah. I think actually the first tape was just some sort of, I think it was actually fairly mainstream thing. It was like a compilation. Mm-hmm. But then I went down, there was this local kind of weird sort of trinket shop that did things like sort of tie-dye trousers and band t-shirts and joss sticks,
yes.
Yeah. and poppers, but then they also had this like rack of kind of rave tapes, I think like Fantasia and Obsession,
tape packs. And those big 18 tape things.
I think it was a bit before. Oh, did they have them? I just remember there being like individual tapes. They just had individual tapes. Anyway, there was one rave from 92, like September 92 or something in Donington Park, and it was a tape. It was a Groove Rider, I think. Groove Rider on one side and some other DJ on the other side. But anyway, and I was just like, right, I'm going to find out about rave, and got this tape, and then it's just, this is obviously before the internet and before Spotify, and that was literally all I had. I had a Walkman, and I had maybe like a tape of Dire Straits. I had a Nirvana Nevermind, and I had like this rave tape, and like obviously Dire Straits and and Nirvana Nevermind. They just didn't get looking after that. So I just got
taped over with more rave.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I hadn't even discovered like how to like de-copy protect tapes. So it was literally, there was no option. Just like, well, okay, you've got this rave tape.
It's like that forever, honestly.
Yeah.
Can't change.
Yeah, you can't change it. Yeah. So I studied that tape for like 3 or 4 months, I think. Literally, like just night on night. That's all I listened to. That one
brilliant
rave tape.
It was huge, wasn't it? Like the 90s was such a fruitful time for music. There was music emanating everywhere. Like the grunge scene was huge. The indie scene was huge. The rave scene as well. Yeah, I think I share with you that idealised view of what rave was as well, having not really known it or sort of been there. Definitely, I can totally relate to that.
Yeah. Well, it's like what drugs are like if you've never taken drugs, or before. I mean, most people who have never taken drugs have like decided they don't want to. But
yeah.
Like as a kid, I kind of imagined like drug experiences would just be this like amazing transcendent experiences, and then you do them, and maybe sometimes they are, but then they've all sorts of pitfalls as well.
Drum and bass was sort of quite prominent, wasn't it, in your like earlier stuff?
Yeah. Well, I was actually pretty kind of eclectic up until I went to university. Well, I mean, I probably had like 2 years of dabbling around with making music. Well, maybe 2 or 3 years before I went to uni.
What were you using to make music?
Well, so the first stuff I did, and some recordings somewhere. I think was the school recording studio that had Fostex R8 reel-to-reel 8-track.
Cool.
Big old Soundcraft mixing desk, an Alesis Microverb, a Juno 106.
Good.
And I bought off the clarinet teacher. The clarinet teacher said, "Oh, yeah, I've got this synth. I don't really use it. I mean, I bought it from a while ago. It seems a bit rubbish to me. You can't really get it working. Do you want to buy it?"
Yeah.
I mean, I bought it for like 300 quid, but you can have it for like 120 quid. And it was a Sequential Circuits Pro 1.
Oh no!
Yeah.
Oh wow! That's
So
good.
I had that.
Was he like, "Oh, it's rubbish. You can't do chords."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can't do chords, and there's no velocity on it, and the keyboard feels shit. And it's just like, yeah, I'll take it off you. It's probably broken. And it was like mint condition.
Such a great synth.
Oh man, such a great
Brilliant.
synth. And because you could put the because it's got the audio in. So I just did loads of kind of dub stuff. I'd kind of go into because I had like a proper live room, so I'd go in like play some drums badly. For 5 minutes, and then play some synth badly for 5 minutes, and then just do some weird kind of loop back, like putting it through the loads of feedback loops basically with the Pro 1 through the filter and and then the microverb and then the EQ, the sort of had swept EQ on the Soundcraft desk, so you could kind of do some fun stuff like that. But it was shit. There was no arrangement to it at all. It was just dub mixing.
That's cool though, isn't it? It's like a very lo-fi setup. What you've got there is really high quality components.
Yeah.
Without a sequencer, but that sort of makes it really fun because you sort of become your own sequencer by adding the echo and using tape loops. Yeah, wow, that's great, man.
It's actually
access to two great synths really early.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Two of the big ones.
Yeah, two of the biggies. But it's weird actually thinking back because like then that setup was like really crap and suboptimal because you didn't have a sequencer. Mm-hmm. But nowadays it's sort of come full circle, and now everybody's throwing out sequence, or everybody's throwing out kind of like composition as a sort of like A to B musical form. Yeah. And there's more. No, sequences are more. Another instrument that kind of lives within. I'm obviously talking like Eurorack and this whole kind of hardware revolution now. But that approach, that sort of dub style approach to things, where you're performing an instrument, is much more current. But at the time, I just felt hamstrung, and I'd tried to make like house tracks, like 90s house tracks, using. Oh, they had some like Casio keyboards that had like quartz clocks in them, so you could lock the times quite easy. So I had the classroom downstairs. I'd go and get like 6 of these Casio keyboards, stack them on top of each other, cue them up on different like demos or drum beats, and then like press play on them all at the same time. Had them going through the desk, and then
nice.
And that was like how you got like electronic sounding stuff.
That's brilliant. Wow. Interestingly, I did find in a charity shop recently the exact keyboard I had in school, GCSE music.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my god, it's got the helicopter, it's got the waves, it's got all these things. I don't remember anything about how to play it. It's just like, whoa, this is the one. Yeah.
It's really amazing. I mean, again, it's weird, thinking back like that, then it just all felt like crap. I was just like, oh, I really want a sampler, and I really want a sequencer, and I really want like all these sound modules, and nowadays like everybody wants those old Casio keyboards, and nobody wants like the sort of the weird Emu MoFat
the rack stuff,
or everyone's getting a bit tired of sequencers and looped this and sequenced that.
Definitely, and also the lo-fi thing is interesting, isn't it? Because in the 90s it was like the CD had arrived, and it was really high fidelity, crystal clear audio. Everything was getting remastered, even the films were getting remastered for the audio. And now everyone's sort of degrading their sound, ripping stuff off YouTube. Like the clarity is not what people are looking for anymore, is it?
Yeah. Well, I guess it's you get to a sort of point of diminishing returns with clarity. I mean, the quality of a sound system you can get for 200 quid these days. The quality of that is so much better than it was 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. And the quality of headphones, the availability of headphones, and like everything is really high quality. And then it's sort of because back in the 90s, you kind of got the feeling that everybody's trying to do the best they can to make like pretty shit speakers sound good. So that's why the production values went up.
Yeah.
To kind of make, really kind of get the best out of that. But now, you don't really need that. People are looking for character rather than quality. I think that's the impression I get.
Yeah, cool. So you studied philosophy at university.
Yeah.
How is that? And does that do you think that influences your music at all?
I mean, I didn't really study philosophy at university. I went to the lectures, but there were only 6 hours of lectures a week. So I spent the rest of the time making tracks and stuff like. I had a little setup. I mean, by that time, I had a PC and Cubase and had an EMU sampler and like one of those Yamaha digital mixing desks. So I had this setup basically in my room at uni, and I just spend all my time just making tracks really, and then occasionally do the sort of. I mean, it was definitely like MVP. And my degree, minimal viable product.
Was it?
my degree. I mean, it did. That's great. I managed to get a 2-1 in the end because in the final year, we did a dissertation. I did my dissertation on the difference between music and noise.
Oh wow!
And I got well into that. I was just like, this is great, and so I got double first for that, and that just kind of like rescued my otherwise very mediocre performance.
That is almost exactly what happened to me at university. Almost exactly the same. I sort of struggled through it and didn't really work very hard. But my final year project, I made a PlayStation controller, which was a software effects unit.
Wow!
And everyone else for their final year projects was doing studio acoustics or designing a 3-channel mixer.
Yeah.
And so I did the same thing. Pulled all the 3 years of bad work back in on the dissertation.
Yeah, it's amazing the power of something you love.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, definitely.
What you'll sort of pull out the bag when you really fired up about it.
Yeah, I'm sure as well though, did you find that going through doing philosophy that there were things that applied to music and applied to making music throughout that?
Yeah, definitely. So I did, after I did the philosophy degree, I went on to do a master's in electroacoustic music. I like to think about things, I like to look outside, because I guess with anything, it's very easy to get just kind of really absorbed and kind of consumed with the minutiae of like the medium or the culture or the scene or whatever, and those kind of like quite contingent cultural facts become quite like set in stone. And I think having done philosophy, I definitely gave me the ability to think. To use a horrible cliche, but to like think outside the box, and to think outside what seemed to be the constraints of a scene or a genre or a piece of equipment or an approach or whatever.
Yeah, well, I mean, for me listening to your drum and bass, it's certainly not someone who's come from the angle of building a template for their track, and at 32 bars the drop happens. It's totally it's very different. I mean, your releases on Moving Shadow, for example, they don't sound like the standard generic sort of drum and bass sound. I know that's not what Moving Shadow is about, but to me I think there has been an element of thinking outside the box in your music from what I've heard.
I think it wasn't a conscious thing. I mean, it was also why I never made it as a drum and bass artist. I think I really genuinely tried. I really, I mean, one of the reasons I sort of ended up going down this drum and bass route it was kind of happenstance in a way, because I was at university in Durham, and the year before I started, John B, the drum and bass. Illustrious illustrious man of drum and bass. He was there, but he still came up to run his drum and bass night in Durham. So I met him, and I was just like, I was making all sorts of stuff at the time. I was making house stuff. I was making trip hop, down tempo, drum and bass, jungle, like the weird shit. I was making bits of everything, and so I thought, okay, I'll make a drum and bass track. And I was actually writing with a friend of mine who was on the philosophy course as well, who's actually now a songwriter and went to went on to write. What's that hit by Ellie Goulding? Well, Ellie Goulding's breakthrough hit. Anyway, he wrote that. I can't remember the name now.
She did a couple. Starry Eyed.
Starry Eyed. That's it.
Yes,
he wrote that. Yeah.
Wow, that was a big track.
That was a big one. Yeah.
She's now the UK ambassador for Pantene hair care. Sorry, I saw that on a website and I just had to tweet it. I'm just like, oh my god, how things have changed for you.
Yeah.
UK ambassador.
Well, actually, joke because I mean they actually approached me, but I turned it down.
Yeah, really. Yeah. Totally. Yeah, I totally see you. Good decision, Tim. Yes.
I think it just would have. I think it could have like damaged the Tim Exile brand a bit. So basically, me and Johnny decided like, okay, let's just like try and make a drum and bass track, and so I mean he's more like instrumentalist songwriter, and obviously it was drum and bass. So eventually it was just he'd sort of be sitting there and I'd be like the controls, and he was just like, why don't you just do it by yourself? And I was just like,
Yeah, he's a great producer, John B. Like he's he's obviously produced some phenomenal tracks, and he's sort of responsible for that trance and bass sound.
He totally. I mean, it was quite because I was in. I mean, he really sort of mentored me through the process. Well, so basically, I gave him this demo that me and my friend Johnny made on a tape, and it took him like a few months to listen to it. And like every time I saw him, you listen to that tape? You listen to that tape? Hi John B, you listen to that tape? And then one time I asked him, he said, "Oh yeah, I should do that actually. I'm launching a record label. I was just thinking, I might like to release it." And at which point I practically shat everything. Actually, it was really funny because it was in this club where he ran his drum and bass night, and Johnny was there as well. And I was just so like kind of that someone was actually going to like release a record. This whole like glamorous future opened up before my eyes. Being the incurable narcissist I am. Yeah. And I went and made a beeline for Johnny and just like grabbed him by his hand, like pulled him out into like the lobby of the club. To tell him, and the bouncers all like descended in, thinking like it's going to be this massive fight. Almost got kicked out of the club. I was like, Johnny's going to release a record.
You've released on Moving Shadow, which is that's a tremendous achievement on its own, isn't it? Really, such a heralded drum and bass label.
Yeah,
it's like the label for so many drum and bass people.
Yeah, it is. I mean,
was that your Bad Diet EP? Was that the one?
There were two. There's a Bad Diet EP, and then there was Don't Forget X. Was that that was an EP as well. Don't Forget X EP. Yeah. Well, it's going to add this side label, the MSX EPs, and I think they were trying to, push some kind of more, off-center sounds, and I definitely tick that box. Not just through my complete inability to like keep the program, rather than any sort of particular contrived. Yeah, I guess I don't know. I wanted to do things differently, but.
Well, it's really strange for me to hear that the track Bad Diet, because I have an old set from Toxic Dance Hall that you did. Yeah. And it's in the first 5 or 10 minutes, that track, but your live version is so good.
What?
Yeah, it's amazing. It's a set that starts off and you say in the mic, it was from Toxic Dance Hall, and you say, "I love it when it all fucking works, yes mate. You what? Works fucking yes mate. You what? Works fucking." So that's the beginning of the set. Like there's some weird, really fast break, but then I will never forget hearing that tune for the first time. That Bad Diet, the live one.
Right.
Wow. I mean, the bass in it is so good. Obviously, there's like a big break in it as well. But
right. Wow.
Such a great track.
Yeah, mental. I mean the mix that like the production on it is horrific. Like the amen is just like every single transient has been like meticulously removed. But yeah, I had a lot of fun making. That was the first track I ever used any of my own software on. At all, there were all these little kind of breaks at the end of the bars, at the end of each phrase. There are these little and those were little effects things that I programmed.
Because it also sounds like you hummed the bass line for that track. Oh no, maybe did you do that in your earlier live sets? Did you like have a mic that was hooked up to a bass, something playing bass?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So what were you building those in?
That was in Sync Modular, which was it then got bought. So Reactor Core is basically Sync Modular.
I see. Right.
So they bought Vadim Zavalishin, who's just like crazy Russian genius, like I mean, he's on another planet with his genius, and he designed this whole system, and then Native bought it and kind of put it in Reactor as this kind of like low level layer where you can program your own DSP.
Right, I didn't know that Native Instruments had bought that. I always thought it was their own baby. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, I think they kind of bought him. Because he'd invented this whole kind of like real-time compiling DSP engine that is Core.
So yeah, you released on Moving Shadow, and later Warp and Planet Mu as well. Yeah,
I was such a freaking label whore, honestly.
You've chosen the best label. So.
Well, yeah, it's yeah. I mean, you know, I was in my 20s. I was really pushy, and you know, pretty narcissistic, pretty ambitious. I'd set these goals. I was very just quite driven. Like even like at school, I remember, you know, within about 6 months of starting to produce, I'm just like, right, within the next 3 years, I want John Peel to play one of my tracks on his radio
that's
show.
A very specific target.
Yeah, and it happened.
Really?
Yeah,
wow,
yeah. Well, that was with the you know, I mean, a lot of that's down to John B. really, because you know he you know, he paid to have a sort of press, you know, for a press person to do press for my releases, and John Peel liked them, picked up on them. I think he did hear that there was something different going on in them. So
that's incredible. I just imagine John B just posting these UV envelopes with like all the fluorescent colours. Everything he does is like disco electro looking things.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't. I think.
I'm sure it wasn't like that, but I'm just imagining his cartoon character John B.
Yeah.
The sort of envelope he would think about posting.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. Wow. So you got played on John Peel.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, you know, R.I.P. Really, really sad when he died. But yeah, I did, and I met him as well. Sonar 2003. This is in my kind of pushy days, as if I'm not in my pushy days anymore. But you know, I think when you get a bit older, you realise like how much of a dick you look when you're really pushy. So you just sort of like become pushy in subtle ways.
You just like. That's really weird that you describe yourself as pushy. I would never have ever put that to you. So I think your online presence and the presence that you have is very good and a very likable person, and not someone who's pushy or over dominating or anything like that.
Clearly my marketing machine is working very well. Well, I mean, you know, I think I've mellowed out a bit, but. I don't know. Maybe also I'm sort of painting myself in a bad light. I mean, you know, I don't think I've ever been an arsehole through and through, but I definitely there are times. I just kind of like, you know, if you want, you know, in your 20s. I was in my 20s in the late 90s. No, I was in my early 20s in the late 90s. No, well, anyway, we're talking about the late 90s, and you know, then you really just had to pursue record labels. I mean, you couldn't just like plop something in the post and then like the test pressings arrive back. Here
it is.
I think I don't know. It's a funny one. I mean, I'm kind of it's something I'm having to work with a lot now. I mean, I think as like the pattern, the sort of habits and the habits of mind and the patterns that you develop in your 20s and so on, there's kind of whatever it is. It's when you get to your late 30s and 40s that you really start to like reap what you sow. And it's always mixed. It always, you have some positive consequences and you have some negative consequences. And I think at the moment, I'm as I told you on the way when we were walking here, I'm working on this mega project. It's a startup basically. I've been working on now for like 3 years, and it's a gargantuan project. But the responsibility I've taken on doing that is just is insane. And I had quite a big burnout last year, and that kind of, that's the darker side of being ambitious and being driven and so on. And the underside. The thing is that a lot of the time, the underside of, or like the dark side of ambition is kind of like needing to prove yourself, and it all goes back to early childhood experiences and like how you're brought up in your family, and the love you didn't get and the trauma you had, and so everybody has, and everybody's shaped in different ways by those early experiences. But a lot. I mean, my ambition is definitely has some unhealthy sides to it, and that's something I'm trying to work with now, because that funnily enough, I found that as like the more ambitious I've got, like the less helpful the drive behind my ambition is in actually allowing me to achieve those things that I decided I want to achieve.
I see. Well, that's an interesting observation.
Yeah, it becomes because it becomes, I've definitely begun to realise like how much I'm just trying to prove myself, prove my worth, rather than look at like, okay, what is this thing that I'm trying to achieve, and how is that useful to people? How is that helpful to people? What's the impact that's going to bring in the world? And not, trying to separate like the glory of Tim Exile from that. And I think like the bigger the stuff that I take on, the more I realise that, oh shit, I have to. The only way this is going to work is if like my ego and the glory of me steps back from this. Because one of the things that I'm kind of working with at the moment is, I've always been like a very self-reliant, very self-willed kind of solo guy, and I've kind of made things happen myself. I've toured around myself. I'm a solo artist. I built this entire music making system myself. I built these products myself. I launched a plugin label myself. I wrote, I kind of like hustled this deal with Warp Records myself, and it's all very, very self-willed and self-reliant and so on. And I am shit at asking for help. I'm absolutely monumentally shit at asking for help, and it's getting to the point now where that's actually something that I really need to work with, because it's it's becoming detrimental to the project I'm working on, and so on.
How about if people offer help? Because there's a very British like sensibility. The British thing to do when someone offers to help is to say, no, it's fine, I'm fine. This is a very automatic, only British response to help. Do you find that you're able to? Is that something else that happens? Because I find myself doing it all the time, and I see people doing it.
Yeah, or just like
people offer to help, and you go, no, it's fine, no, it's okay, I'm okay, no problem, and then you're just having a meltdown. So, it's never gonna work. What am I gonna do?
No, it is. It's totally like that, and looking at some kind of the the sort of psychological mechanisms behind that, like what there's the big helping of pride in that, and the threat of, well, on one side the threat of kind of being weak, you think. Well, I do. I get in these states. I mean, what generally happens with me is I'll work on. There's something that needs to be done. As like the founder of a startup, and there's like 6 of us in the team really. But I'm the guy. I'm leading it. I'm also like the main investor, and I've financed it in large part up till now. And what I tend to do is think that the only person who can make this happen is me, and then I go in this like hyperdrive mode. And the thing is that like I'm quite effective when I'm in hyperdrive, and I can actually make shit happen. But it's always a bit like RSI of the mind, when you can. You won't, like with RSI, you only really realise that you're in trouble until it's too late.
Yeah.
Because you can work through the pain,
Mm-hmm.
and that's something that I definitely do, and that's something I really need to work on. Is like just muscling through this pain, or muscling through difficulty, and being in hyperdrive, and making shit happen. But then at the end, like as soon as there's like a pause or a break, like all that suppressed anxiety and all that all the exhaustion just like comes out, takes over, and it comes out in like weird ways, you know. Yeah.
It's good to recognise it. I think that's the important thing, that you recognise it, and then you can start to make changes to make it more workable.
Yeah, that's like this whole process I'm in at the moment is that, which is challenging in its own right.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure it would be a huge success. I think everything you've released has been superb. All of the plugins that you've made have been immense amounts of fun. I know people have probably seen them on Sonic State. You did some great talks with Gaz.
Oh yeah,
Gaz and Sonic State, talking through all of them. And your flow machine as well, which, as you say, you single-handedly created. It is a phenomenal performance tool.
He's a bit of a beast.
It's incredible. You performed with it at CERN, didn't you?
Yeah.
As a TED talk.
Yeah, with the stage invasion.
Yeah, how did that feel to be performing there?
Oh yeah, that was meant. That was just one of those, like universe aligning things. I mean, it was a really good day, and really good talks, a really really good vibe, and the whole thing was just incredibly well organised. And then so I kind of played at the very end of this day when everybody was just ready to like get up and dance, and then lo and behold, like 10 minutes later, stage, all this like crazy sort of break dancing going on. It was pretty cool. I was fighting back the tears at the end.
Really?
Tears of joy. Well, something
yeah.
like that happened. It's just quite like, wow, you definitely felt like
an incredible moment. Like,
yeah, some sort of portal had opened up.
Yeah, sometimes that happens, doesn't it? I've spoken to other people about having, what is conventionally called an out-of-body experience, when you either meet someone or you're in a situation, and I'm sure that was one of those moments.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. It's one of those kind of peak things that happens, once every couple of years or something.
Got one question here, which is what appeals to you about improv instead, as opposed to, say, releasing conventional music? What is it about live improvisation that appeals to you?
Yeah, well, there've been all. I mean, that's changed. Like, I think originally I was just like, going back to those days of the bootleg rave tapes, it felt to me, because I came into that experience, that listening. I came into hearing that as a violinist, as someone who plays a musical instrument, where, with a violin, you put the bow on the string and you move it, and it makes noise. And when you stop moving, it stops making noise. So that's my kind of like baseline conception of what music is about and where it comes from. So when I heard this electronic music, I was already, even at the age of 12, I was hearing this as something that could be performed live, and I was, which led me into DJing, and then I very quickly realised that DJing was not the kind of performance I wanted, which led me to make the flow machine, and that was, where I could actually play electronic music with my hands and be really physical with it.
Yeah. So when did the flow machine start? Where did that? I know it's grown into something big and beautiful, and it's.
I wouldn't say beautiful, big, sprawling.
Where have you got like a patch that was like, oh, that was the first one, that was the beginning of the flow machine?
Yeah, well, so there are kind of two. There have been two incarnations. The first one was this thing called Mental Deck, which was basically, it started out as a DJing tool with kind of like hyper editing, really hyper editing. What do I mean? But I made this thing called a key masher.
Yes.
Right, yeah.
You made that in 1066, I believe.
Yes.
According to your YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Incredible, really, for the,
I know.
time.
Yeah. Well, it was, I mean, very early days back then. Very early days. So the key masher. That was the first thing, and that was actually. I mean, that was definitely like a schoolboy fantasy. I mean, I got quite into jungle when I was like 14, 15, and all the cut up breaks. It was just like, wow, this is amazing, and that felt something like that. You should be able to improvise that.
Mm-hmm.
You should be able to like have breaks on your fingers and kind of mash them up and do these
Re-trigger
edits,
things,
re-trigger things in real time. Which, of course, nowadays like you can. I mean, that's like a totally normal thing to do, but in 1994 was like a completely unheard of thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, without doing it in a sampler and programming all the MIDI beforehand.
Yeah,
like that's the only way of doing it, really, wasn't it?
Exactly. So that was the first thing I made. It's like a tool for you load a break up and then you can kind of re-trigger all these different trigger points and do what people now call like flux mode stuff and so on. And then I was like, okay, that's cool. We can do that to a break, so let's do that to a track. So you can play a whole track through and then mash up different sections. I was like, that's cool. Why don't we have two tracks you can do that with and have a crossfader so you can DJ and mash stuff up? It was like, that's cool. Okay, let's have a drum break thing so you can put some drum breaks in on top. That's cool. How about we have 4 tracks? Oh, that's cool. How about we also like live sample into those channels and then be able to mash up the samples? That's cool. How about we have effects channels and then you can put the live samples through effects and then re-loop and then remash them up. And then it sort of, then it just like ballooned into
exponential growth.
Yeah.
One thing.
And then the mental deck just fell over, sort of on its knees. I just didn't know how to program stuff. I had no idea of like good programming practices.
Yeah, I think that's the thing you learn about programming, because I've used Max MSP for years, and you learn that there's an efficient way to build something, and there's just, you build something one time and you're not thinking about efficiency, you're thinking about functionality.
Yeah.
And then you come back to a patch years later and you go, wow, that's using way more processing power than is necessary for the calculation that's happening.
Yeah. Or everything is just like in a big sort of spaghetti mess. And it's just
Can you do that in Reactor? Can you have like segmented patch cords so you draw them all around each other?
No.
Yeah, that's where Max MSP's got so good at like helping you as a user.
Yeah.
But Reactor's brilliant too. I remember playing around with Reactor and having so much fun.
Yeah, it's really great. It really is great, and I've like lost so many hours to Reactor. It's really, really powerful. I kind of I've got I've just my time is like completely spoken for at the moment, which is really annoying, but when I do get moments to kind of think about stuff, I've got this whole like composition system that I want to build at some point that I'll probably do in Reactor, but I mean it's not going to be in the next 2 or 3 years.
Cool. That sounds good.
Just love, this actual just sort of just really. What's really great about stuff like Reactor and Max MSP is you can really just think. You can think as far as you want, and you can build anything, and you really don't have to be constricted.
Yeah, absolutely. It literally is a blank canvas. You're limited. Yeah. You are limited by your own imagination more than anything else with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, that's a really nice thing about Reactor is it's quite kind of dialogue. You definitely feel when I'm programming in Reactor that it's a dialogue. Mm-hmm. You're trying things out and you're kind of thinking. You can think through stuff in Reactor. Mm-hmm. I guess it's similar. It's similar with coding. I mean, I've never done any text-based coding to speak of. Mm-hmm. But I've seen a lot of people do it, and then how they approach it. I think it's quite similar. The thing is when you get really into Reactor, into doing like really deep stuff, it would actually be a lot quicker to be programming in a text-based language like C++.
Really?
Because you have to. There are so many workarounds. basically when you need a really bespoke data structure to do something specific, whether it's like handling loops or passing audio around, sharing audio across multiple areas across a patch, or especially kind of event handling stuff, then you really have to build bespoke data structures, and the process, the things you have to do to build those, you could do in C++, and actually C++ has much more stuff that would like pointers and smart pointers and all this kind of stuff that will help you deal with data arrays. Whereas in Reactor, you have to build. If you want to have a pointer system, you have to make a pointer system in Reactor before you can start building the thing you actually want to build.
Mm-hmm. But this is why I build these things, because the synths that were made in the 80s, they're just not programmable, like the DX7 and the TX81Z and all the other things, like the FBO1 for some reason has just been this thing that I've loved programming, because it's so difficult and it's so weird, but I just want to nail it, and I want to make the best editor possible for it, so you can finally do all the things that were possible on it 30 years ago, but no one's ever done because it's impossible to program. So I've got a bit obsessed with the FBO1. One thing I wanted to ask you, and this was just something that came to me on the train, and it was just like, I don't know the answer to this, and I really want to hear what you think. Why does mashing up loops and chopping them up and re-triggering them and pitching them, why does that sound and feel so good?
I don't know. Why does it feel so good? Why does it feel like? Why does it feel so good? There's some. I think there's something to do with kind of like the complexity, because what you're doing when you deal with sample-based stuff. So let's say, let's as a counterpoint, let's use like synthesis. Synthesis is very controlled and quite mathematical, unless you use something like FM, where you very quickly get into like quite complex sidebands with not that much kind of fancy routing of oscillating carriers and modulators and so on. But subtractive synthesis, you've got your square wave or a saw wave, and then you've got a filter, and you subtract things, and then you can add modulation. But you've got this very it's a very kind of like incremental progression of complexity that you get with synthesis. So as you add modulation, you can hear the sound getting more complex, but the it's very kind of like one-to-one, the work that has to be done to make a synth sound complex, all the different LFOs and different envelopes, and each time you add something. Whereas with glitching stuff, because you've already got the sample there, which has and samples are inherently very complex. That's what's cool about samples. They've got all these kind of like little, the character of the sample is changing, every frame of audio. It's very, if you kind of broke it down. Well, if you look at the spectrogram of a sample, an FFT spectrogram, you can just see there's so much complexity.
Yeah, fragments of harmonics that just appear and disappear. And...
Yeah, exactly. And I think as inhabitants of the real world, we're used to things very quickly getting into sort of untraceable complexity. Like, for some reason, the image I've got in my head now is walking. Well, it's a wet and rainy day today, and you walk down Roman Road to get here. So I've got a picture of like the number 8 bus like driving through a puddle at the side of the pavement, and the sound, the motion and the sound that comes from that is it's very. So you've got this very simple motion. You've got the harmonic motion of the wheels, the rotation of the wheels. You've got the forward trajectory of the bus. You can kind of purify that mathematically quite simply. Like you've got bus going in direction. You've got wheels turning at a uniform speed. and then it hits this puddle, and then you're into like crazy laws of thermodynamics, fluid dynamics, and then and the drops, like the tread on the tires will make the drops go different ways, and the sound that you get is really complex, but it's not just noise. It's not just white noise. It's not like, it's sort of like, it's got this whole like, and it's just so much like it's fractal, like the complexity that comes out of it. And I think that's when you start dealing with mashing up sample material, like material that's already quite complex from the world, or that's been bounced down from audio that's already been sequenced. You've got something that's already got a lot of complexity in there, and then you're using techniques that sort of exponentially multiply complexity. And I think it's just the results are quite unexpected. You can't really, whereas you can write mathematical formulas to predict how a synth, or let's say a kind of like perfect digital synth, will render a certain sound, but very hard to do that with samples, just because there's so much complexity. And I think our ears like that. I mean, we deal with complexity. Yeah.
That's a good answer.
Thanks. Nice little riff.
Because I've never thought about that, and I just sort of thought, why is it so good? Have you ever used, just out of interest, Renoise, the DAW Renoise?
No.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
It's so good for cutting stuff up.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. It's really
I guess
great.
I'm a hands-on cutter-upper. That's my whole MO of like cut-uppery. Either that, either hands-on or just like completely composed, like in Pro Tools, just making every single chop do exactly what it should do.
Finessing
it,
the automation.
Yeah.
Like when you've got like 30 channels of automation on a track.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Cool. So how about things like found sound? Are you into recording stuff?
Yeah. I mean, it's something that I've never done it extensively, but it's something I'd really like to do. I've got this like imaginary retirement where I'll just do really self-indulgent stuff, and such as like building an entire composition environment. And another one is I've got designs on doing. I want to like get back into composing, but composing it as AV. So doing audio and video, and doing because I quite I've messed around with making videos and stuff like that. I find it quite fun. I'm a big nature fan. I love being out in nature. I've developed a bit of a sort of relationship with the north of Norway in the last couple of years. Up in the Arctic Circle, so go back there a couple of times, just kind of like walking and skiing, and it's stunning. It's just, I don't know. There's something very unexplainable going on there for me.
Absolutely. No, I know exactly what you mean. Scandinavia is a place really close to my heart, and we used to go skiing in the north of Sweden.
Right.
2003. And I have such a strong affiliation and connection to Scandinavia. Yeah. Do you get on with the climate?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a hot climate kind of guy. Summer stresses me out. I mean, I love spring. I love like change. I love the whole like new life. But once the hot days have been around for more than like a couple of weeks, I'm just like, can we have some winter now, please?
Yeah, I'm exactly the same. Seriously, I'm exactly the same. People are like, well, why do you like the winter? I'm like, I love the winter. Yeah, it's like overcoming adversity. That's what it feels like to me.
Yeah,
It's not an easy thing to do, but it's rewarding and it looks beautiful.
Oh, stunning. Yeah.
I lived in Siberia as well.
What?
2013, I lived in Siberia.
Wow.
Which was, it was an amazing 8-month winter that was just, it was incredible. It was like really incredible time in my life.
Wow.
I love the cold too. I love the cold climate.
That's proper cold. I mean, where I go in Tromsø is, I mean, it gets down to -10. I mean, it's 200 miles into the Arctic Circle, but because it's basically right at the top of the Gulf Stream, so it doesn't get ridiculously cold. But it's still, the wind, everything is frozen all the time in the winter, but it's not like -40. it's just -10.
Yeah. There's something about the Scandinavian people that's amazing, really sort of loving and helpful, kind people.
Yeah.
The food's great, isn't it, in Scandinavia?
When you can afford it.
Yeah, that's true. And like everything's made well. You go to people's houses and like everything's like really good quality.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think they do have a strong connection to nature. Like you were saying about doing the found sound stuff. They do have that.
Yeah, totally. Well, it's one of my friends in Tromsø, Per Martinson, trades as Mental Overdrive, who's like, he's like 53. He looks about 40. But you know, he's been doing stuff for ages. He's a good friend with Biosphere, who you know, is a big figure in the whole ambient and ambient is such a catch-all term, but he's done a lot of, you know, recording kind of ice flows and stuff like that.
Wow. And
what I'd love to just do. I mean, my ideal day in this like imaginary retirement where, you know, I never have to work again and is, you know, I'd go out in the morning, go hiking with like, you know, some really nice mics and a really nice camera and a really nice sound recorder, and just go, you know, 2-hour hike on my own, beautiful fjords and mountains, and just, you know, record some really nice like locked off shots of beautiful nature, and then come back to a studio and then you know, kind of like process the audio and also process the video. I've got some ideas of like some sort of video processing algorithms I'd like to mess around with at some point. But you know, this is all in this imaginary retirement.
It's brilliant. I think that's an amazing thing to do, to have this imaginary retirement thing where it's like what you want to do when you know you're not going to want to program everything. I think that's really good. It sounds like a really idyllic idea. Well,
it is an idyllic idea. I mean, it's not reality.
Maybe,
but you know, it keeps me going sometimes in the darker moments. I'm just like, I'll have a hut on a fjord.
Exactly.
You know,
fire burning.
Nice log burning stove, and I'll have a Tesla. You know, all these kind of like weird sort of spurious desires.
Jetpack.
Yeah, I have a jetpack.
You've done a lot of collaborations with people, notable ones with Sheriff Hashizume.
Yeah,
which you did. Him on the modular and you on the flow machine.
Yeah. That was down. So he now lives in Felixstowe, Folkestone. But he, for a long time, he was living in London. He was working at the studio where John Hopkins' studio is, and actually I borrowed John's studio to do the IBM track, because he's got a proper mixing environment rather than my sort of punk ass just like put some speakers in the bedroom. But I mean, I've worked with Sharif quite a bit. I mean, he while I was touring more, he used to come around and he used to come along with me and do sound. He's a really good live sound guy. Mm-hmm. And of course, you know, he's doing his modular thing, which is sort of quite, you know, it's just really kind of taking off, I think, his whole modular thing. So we did a 360 camera angle jam thing that you could sort of collaborated with Sharif.
I think someone who's always, for me, been like you and Beardy Man.
Have
always just been like the British representatives for improvised live music.
Yeah.
And there is a jam of you playing at Fabric.
Yes.
On YouTube.
Yeah. No, we did. I think we jammed together before. There were a couple of things, because when I was touring more, you know, we'd sort of often end up in the same place. So, you know, he came on a couple of times. Yeah, we kind of meet up. We had this sort of funny. I don't know. We sort of run into each other and then plan to do something, and then I think we're my sense is we've both just got all our own ideas of like all these things we need to do. So we're it's a bit like herding cats.
But it does work really well. I mean, the combination, I think for anyone on the outside is like, wow, Tim Exile and Beardy Man, they're like the two. They're both like at the peak of their game, doing like sort of live electronic improv.
Yeah,
it's like a super group, almost the two of you together. So it was great to see. Great to see you two working together and sort of doing similar things, but you're doing very much your own thing.
Yeah, it's quite distinct. I mean, Daz is. I'm always just consistently impressed with. I mean, he's such a good performer. You know, with the comedy stuff as well. I mean, it's really it's really impressive. You know, I kind of I always sort of wish I had a bit more like shtick, but I think I've got. Yeah, I think recently I've got more into just doing the music, kind of, you know, in inverted commas, like letting the music speak for itself.
Yeah.
Which can, obviously it relies on the music a lot more. Which that's the thing with improv. It's like sometimes it can be good, sometimes it can be bad.
Definitely.
It's very much, it's as much down to the audience as it is down to the performer, and, you know, what kind of mood I'm in, and how kind of receptive I am, how receptive the audience is. And
yeah, I think that's the beauty of what you do, because with improv music it takes a lot more guts to go up there and just improvise something, you know, and I think that's where you get the magic of those performances, when it does all just click.
Yeah,
you've got something working.
Yeah,
that's something that you don't get with a more conventional performance.
Yeah,
for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely. But I mean, it's a hair-raising experience. I mean, I think you know, one of the reasons after that Warp album, after kind of like touring that album, I sort of made this conscious decision that I was just going to do improv and I wasn't going to write tracks anymore. I think my idea was I'd kind of build a real sort of like career as an improv artist, but it doesn't really. It never really worked out the way. It didn't quite work out the way I'd imagined. And it's quite hard. It's quite hard to interface with the music industry, because the music industry expects repertoire, and it expects catalogue, it expects releases that people can buy and then listen to, fall in love with, become really accustomed to, and then go and see that stuff kind of it's kind of realised live in a venue, and that's not what improv is.
Yeah, people expect like the CD replication to be the live performance.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Whereas what you're basically selling them as a dice roll is like, come along, pay, I don't know, whatever ticket prices are these days, to come and see something that might be shit. It might be amazing. And you know, I think as a sort of, as an entertainment proposition, it's a hard sell, especially when you're doing improv in an area or a genre that isn't really used to improv. I mean, I think my kind of like militant idealist was like, let's make dance music an improvised medium, thinking that could be a one-man task, which it clearly isn't. It needs like a massive cultural shift, and I think that's beginning to happen now with the whole modular thing. But you know, when I was trying to do it in 2005, everyone was just like, you freak. apart from like a few people who really got it and were really interested.
Yeah, I think that's where it happens though. You know, you're saying it's like a roll of the dice to people. There are people that are willing to take that chance to see performance after performance to get to get the magic. But yeah, you're right. Modular performances are sort of taking over a bit, and that is more of it's less of a structured thing than just pressing the space bar for Ableton to just run through your track,
and then tweaking a filter every now and again.
Interestingly, I talked to the guy who runs Fonk. I don't know if you know Fonk.
I know. Yes,
like modular.
Yeah.
Retail outlet, and he said something amazing that had never come into my mind before. That playing with modular, and I think your stuff also falls into the same category. It's sort of like it doesn't require resolution like conventional music, and it feels more like you would sitting down playing the guitar in your room than the other ways to make music.
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly where I'm at with everything. Yeah, I mean, resolution in music and, A to B music that follows a timeline that is then recorded and sort of set in stone or pressed on vinyls or, saved as a file and then distributed. I mean, that is... I mean, it's a very important thing. It's never going to go away, and it's a great format. But we've lost through the sort of. I mean, that's what music is these days. When people think of music, they think of either like a thing, a playlist on Spotify, or or a vinyl, but it's all stuff that has a start and has an end, and will always sound exactly the same between that start and that end. But music has only been like that for the last maybe 150 years, and even before that, before we started recording sound, there was notation, but even notation is very much open to interpretation, but most music was just it was a phenomenon. It wasn't a product. It was something that happened, that was ungraspable, it was ephemeral. You could remember it and recall it and reproduce it, but in the reproduction you'd be adding something new to it. So it was something that there was an element of a conversation to it. There was an element to it was just an activity, and everybody was involved in it to some extent. You'd go to a ceilidh, and there'd be the musicians, but there's a very, very sort of fuzzy boundary between like who is playing in the ceilidh and who isn't, and who's dancing and who's singing, and this, as that the shift started to happen, like in the early 1900s, every household had a piano, and that everybody would buy sheet music and everybody would learn to play the piano, and that was the thing. Like there'd be a musician in the house, like. Unless you were kind of like really, really poor, that was, you'd gather around the Joanna, and someone would play, you'd have a sing along, and it was a very democratic thing, and it's something that happened in a moment and then stopped. And that has gone. But I think that I think like my prediction for the next 20-30 years of music is that this new space, this like lost, the sort of Atlantis. I mean, this is the Atlantis of music, basically, like real-time music that has no resolution, is going to come back massively. And I think, I don't know, my bet would be that it's going to be at the level of like social change.
Really? Well,
yeah, I think, yeah.
Sort of everybody making improvised music across the board. How do you visualize it happening?
Well, I think so. At the moment, the way music is, you've got A to B music, that's perfect and finished, and above that, on top of that, it's all a very high standard, and it requires a huge amount of skill to get there, right? So, one of the reasons that there are relatively so few kind of proper musicians in the world, people who you could go up to in the street and say, "Are you a musician?" Most people, like more than 9 out of 10, like probably 95, 96 people out of 100 would say, "No, I'm not a musician."
Yeah, absolutely. Even probably some musicians.
Would say, "Yeah, exactly," because
really
everybody's comparing themselves to this very, very, very high bar. But the thing is, with music that doesn't have a resolution, you've got so part of that high bar, you've got the quality, but then you've also got this format. Like if it's less than like 2 minutes long, it doesn't really count as a piece of music, and if it's not like mixed really well, it doesn't count as a piece of music. If it doesn't have various different sections, it doesn't count as a piece of music. It doesn't have all these different parts, it doesn't count. Yeah. So, but you think about the experiences that everybody has as a kid with music. Like the box of percussion instruments in the classroom, and everybody can get an instrument out, and everybody can play something, whether it's a triangle or the shaker or the tambourine, and maybe there's some kids in the class who've learned to play an instrument and can do something a bit more, but you're all there playing together and you're all having a musical experience, and and you're not holding yourself up to any bar at all. You're just enjoying that experience right then and there. And there isn't really so much of a boundary between listening and creation. It's just something that it's open plan. Like listening, the household of listening and creation is totally open plan, and you don't really know whether am I creating this, or am I just like playing along, or am I just listening? It's just you go between those just in the moment. Whereas
definitely.
And how it is nowadays is that you really have to take a massive leap to go from listener to creator nowadays. And
would that be the ideal then? Like something where it's accessible? Because I know you have talked a couple of times about I think in one of your TED talks you're talking about the making it accessible, the flow machine, for example.
Yeah.
Because when you explain it and you do it, it's easy for people to see what's happening and how it's happening. So I guess then it's making software and things, music making more accessible to people, isn't it? That's going to make that happen.
Yeah. But I think so. There's a whole lot of chat in the music tech industry at the moment about like democratizing music, like who's going to make the Instagram of music and almost to the point of it being a bit of a cliche.
But I never thought about the Instagram of music.
Right. Well, yeah. But this idea of democratization, because it is still niche in comparison to the number of people who listen to music and have a relationship to and understand music, which is like the majority of the population of the world.
It's really rare when you meet someone who goes, I don't like music, isn't it?
Yeah.
You meet that person like once every 10 years.
Yeah, exactly. You just like don't listen to any music at all. And it's odd. And but I think that the thing that gets in the way of that is the solution that a lot of people think about is that, okay, we have to make it easier for people to make tracks. And that is not the solution, because that's the problem. that's why we're here. I mean, I'd say the future of music is joy, not tracks. Tracks are inherently hard, and if you want to make that process easy, then you're going to trivialize the results. So I mean, you're not onto a winner.
I feel slightly responsible for some of that myself.
But that's, I mean,
having no part in it.
Yeah, but I think it's the sample industry is important, and people being able to just kind of just layer loops together to get some sense of creative agency is important, because that might be the first step for some people, and that might be enough for some people. That might be what they want to do.
Definitely. Have you seen what Korg have just released? Korg have just released something for the
Nintendo Switch.
Switch.
Yeah, gadget.
It's like a 4-player. It's a 4-player DAW that you can play on your TV.
Right. Oh, I didn't realise it was multiplayer.
Yeah.
Right.
I saw the video. Was it yesterday or today? And like, wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
But I think that is cool when you can make music together using unconventional instruments or methods. That's always like a fun thing to do, isn't it?
It's really fun. It's really bonding. I mean, it's sort of it's one of those experiences that can really like gel groups of people together, because you're outside. It's sort of kind of common knowledge nowadays that like what we say in conversation, the sort of linguistic content of what we say is not really what makes us form the bond. It's all the kind of like irrational, post-rational, emotional, body language and stuff like that. That's the stuff that bonds us, and that's very much the domain of music.
So aside from the flow machine, which you've made, you've released loads of great pieces of software over the years for native instruments and of your own. Lots of them relating to parts of the body. Do you plan to go to any other parts of the body?
No. I think that that meme is spent now. I think. So the first one was the finger, and that was 2009, which is it's like a live effects processor that you can play on your keyboard. So each key is a different effect, and it's got this fun little kind of routing thing that it routes the effects in the order you press them on the key. So you could do pretty heavy mangling quite quickly.
Yeah.
So the mouse was the one after that. That was just over a year later, and that's a kind of like. Well, it's not just voice. You can well, it just takes audio in. It takes voice stuff, but you can also feed drums through it, and it'll do kind of sensible. I say in inverted commas, sensible-ish stuff. But that's a sort of the mouth is a kind of like a cut and shut of various different things. So it's got like an auto-tune algorithm in there. It's got a harmonizer. It's got a vocoder. It's got a voice synth. And it's got various sub-synths and then some effects and processing, but it's all in kind of squished into a quite noodleable with interface. It's very hands-on, and that the mouth was a great success. That was a bit of a high point, not least for the video.
The big mouth that you had.
Yeah, well,
the big object. Oh, is that it?
That's it.
Fantastic!
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, still there ruling the roost. Well, that basically the mouth paid for the down payment on this flat. So
that mouth
there. So basically, took bloody ages to make Flesh.
Really?
It's about 3 years, I think, at the end. Spent a long time on it. But yeah, all the DSPs, fresh DSP
cool
for that project.
It's so good. I made a little 2 joystick XY controller
Oh wow!
that I was messing around with, and I think what's good in Flash for me is the visual feedback you get with it. You know, the way it's like it builds the waveform around in the circle. It's just the icing on the cake, you know, because you can hear what it's doing, but also to see it in such vivid. Beautiful colours. I think it's a really great product. That really.
Yeah, I mean the interface designer from that Eflem, who works at Native. He's phenomenal. And he actually pushed me to go. I think in the prototype or the kind of first version that I took to Native had linear waveforms, and Efrem was just like, "Oh no, I really think we should have circular waveforms." Just like, what? Are you crazy? But then, it took a lot. It took a lot of tinkering around to get that work. But I did eventually get them working. I mean, a lot of hacking because Reactor's graphics are pretty rudimentary, really, especially for doing kind of real time stuff and or doing sort of rendered-y stuff. But yeah, I'm really glad that Eflem pushed me to do that because, they do look.
It looks amazing. I think so many people have probably thought about how they can render audio as literally a visual loop.
Yeah.
Without like making it look stupid or tacky, but he absolutely nailed it. It looks so good, and it like responds to all your changes that are happening live.
Yeah.
It's a really, really great piece of software. I had many hours of fun.
Oh, cool.
Messing around with that, and you can. It's so easy to send CCs to. It's not something where you need to dive in deep.
Right.
To find where you want to be. I think you just right click on it and say CC14, and then bang, it's there.
Yeah.
Which is really, really cool. And then you have your website, which contains lots of things beginning with the acronym SLO.
So we've got the first one was slow, which is this kind of mega long reverb. It was such a fluke thing. It took the whole thing took me 3 days.
Really?
In total, to build the algorithm, do the interface, make the video, do all the launch marketing stuff. And it was a 3-day project.
Nice. That's amazing.
It started on a long haul flight. Actually, from that IBM project, I was flying back from China, and I was just like, I'm going to mess around. I'm going to mess around with a reverb and try and learn a bit more about how reverbs work, and then I just got really into it. And kind of put in some more diffuser delays and tried to make it like a really dense, lush reverb. And just like, hang on, what happens if you make the reverb time like times 10, and then just kind of like made this thing. I just thought, I'll just call it slow, and then did this like video on there used to be a piano there, and just record this piano, and then it went kind of viral.
Yeah, it was great. It was such a genius idea.
It was just a simple idea. I mean, it's one of those really annoying things that like I spent 3 years making Flesh with Native, and like that huge amount of resources and effort put in their end, and it's a great product, and loads of people did loads of really great work on it. And then I do this 3-day thing slow, and then next day it's got 100,000 views and like tens of thousands of downloads, and it's just like,
you can't control those things.
You can't control it. You can't control it.
But it's super gratifying to have that amount of. I think it's the beauty of a simple idea, isn't it? You have a simple idea that is just one single thing, and it just resonates with people. Yeah, definitely, it is a genius. So it's essentially you can play into it, and the reverb lasts for an exceptionally long time. Yeah,
it's just the delays. I basically just, I did do quite a lot of like tinkering around with the algorithm, putting extra diffusers in and stuff like that. But then, the main thing is just like, let's turn up the delay time, like multiply the delay times times 10, and that's what slow is, and then I guess did a bit of like optimization around it, and made it sort of behave nicely-ish.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. Someone opened up one of the old Lexicon reverb boxes, which was like a big sort of 8-unit rack thing. Yeah, and he opened it up to show me what it was, and it's like loads of circuit boards that are all just delays. So each one's a tiny one. That one's a delay for very close, and then they sequentially just sort of longer and longer. Yeah, I was like, wow, is that how a hardware reverb, the old school hardware reverb, was made? It's just like loads of delay, like circuit boards in a row.
Wow,
so cool.
Wow.
Yeah, so you've done this slow. So that wasn't shed loads of anything, was it?
No, that was just slow.
It was just slow. Right, okay.
Because it was slow.
Cool. So then the other ones you've made are shed loads of oscillators.
Yeah.
Which
how do you? Anyway, sorry. No, it was just a really bad joke. I'm gonna have to tell it now because oh god. How do you titillate an ocelot?
I don't know.
Oscillate its titillot. Anyways, you can cut that one out if you want. We'll keep it in. Whatever.
I'll keep it in, of course. So yeah, you've shown Gaz Williams at Sonic State these things. So if anyone wants to see them, they can check out their full features, and they are incredible. So Slew was the sort of like shed loads of oscillators. So it's a lot of oscillators that are slightly detuned from each other.
Well, they've got. It's more. Because there's loads of synths with loads of oscillators, but it's more how they work together. So everything is swarmed. So the oscillators are always swarmed. So that like the input is always monophonic, but then if you play polyphonically, you can kind of spread. You can swarm the oscillators across different keys. But it's just like a weirdo approach to synthesis, basically. And it allows you to get kind of quite dense sounds, and it can be quite, sort of enharmonic, or they can be nicely harmonic, and you get chords, and because all the parameters are can be swarmed, including like the LFOs and the filters and the FM stuff can all be swarmed, so you can get quite sort of rich, dense sounds out of it with relatively little tweaking.
Yeah, I think that's what's great about it. The GUI, the visual element to it is very simple and very like appealing. It doesn't. There's a lot of synths that can have a lot of visual information that can throw people a bit, especially if they know really what that is happening. Yeah. I think that's what's great about your stuff is that it's sort of very crystal clear. But what's also good about it is like pushing the boundaries of synthesis and what can be done. I think that's where your strength is, in your dynamism as a creator, to make those niche things and to know that there's people that want that stuff, people that want to sort of use that stuff too. So and then you did the Slaw, which is Shadows of Resonation.
Which is better. I mean, it looks the same as Slew, and it's basically like swapping out. It swaps out the oscillators for these resonators. That it's a bit of DSP I've kind of been messing around with for over a decade. But it's basically like these self-normalizing delay lines. So it's kind of a cross between a sort of granular thing and a delay line, but it's got like a sort of RMS detector. So it means that it'll never die away, and it'll never like get out of control. It keeps everything. Yeah, it keeps everything. So which means that you can put anything you like in the feedback path. So you put crazy EQ boost. You can put saturation, frequency modulation, or like other delay lines. Sort of to do sort of weird like kind of modal synthesis stuff. And it's actually there's something like that in Flesh. The polysynth in Flesh uses a similar algorithm, but I just kind of like tweaked it a bit more. Did a bit more work on it, and then sort of swapped out the engines and did a bit of other stuff to kind of get it to work nicely as an effect. But
that is a cool thing, just having that limitation of being able to throw anything together in terms of like feedback and signal, and knowing that it's not gonna like go wild and blow speakers or blow your ears off.
I mean that's one of when it comes to like engineering stuff that's good for improv, you need a lot of stuff like that, but you also need to know like when to deploy it and when to like just let things go out of control, because part of the joy of improv is like things go out of control. Definitely, and it's that hitting that sweet spot between like, okay, we don't want levels like popping way out and clipping, nor do we want things like disappearing out, nor do you want so when you're looping, for example, one of the things, if you're keeping layering up loops, you get to the mush point where nothing.
We've all been there.
We've all been to the mush point, and then how do you deal with the mush point? And when you want to add, maybe you want to add new material, then so you need kind of leveling stuff. So I've done. I mean, a lot of my kind of DSP research has been about stuff. The kind of level management in samples and algorithms for like how do you because I think you can take the RMS of a sample. It's really easy to get the RMS of a sample. It's a simple bit of maths. But the RMS of something that has like a bunch of transients in, and compared to the amplitude. Let's say you've got like a track that's just a drone, and then you've got a track that's a drone with drums. Obviously the track with the drone with drums will come out louder RMS wise, but in terms of like perceived level, you'd sort of want them to be treated as something similar. Do you see what I mean? So you want to allow an affordance for like some transients to get through. So like how do you deal with that? You're making algorithms that are a bit smarter with level detection and stuff like that.
I've just got a couple of questions to finish on. If that's okay.
Is this a quick fire round?
You know what? When I first started out, I really wanted to do that sort of thing and throw in like, do you like hamsters or gerbils? But that was a stupid idea.
I'll probably go for hamsters, but anyway.
Okay.
Maybe gerbils. Oh God.
It's a tough one. If you were to make a manual for the Flow Machine, like if you were going to release it, what would that manual look like? And how big would it be in terms of instructions for it?
How long with a manual for the Flow Machine? Well, okay, let's say if we can exclude like install,
Yeah.
And that's probably like a day's 1-to-1 tuition. or like after that, manual for the flow machine.
You can use
I
pictures.
reckon.
You can use pictures, no problem.
Yeah. But I reckon it would probably run to about 100 pages, maybe. Probably something like that.
Yeah. I think the beauty is in its simplicity, what you've got there.
Yeah, I don't think we'd be much more. There's not that much going on.
Yeah.
What the complexity that comes out is through the kind of resampling, and kind of looping, resampling, and relooping.
Yeah.
And affecting stuff like that. So
I love that feature that you have where you've got your 8 loops on the thing on the right hand side, and then you just like bounce them all, and then that's one new loop, and you've got 7 more spaces. It's such a genius idea, that, because I think when you're making DSP things and you're making plugins, the temptation is always to go, well, I could just make that 16 loops. You haven't got the CPU limitations you used to have. But I think that's a brilliant piece, an element of the software that you've made that's like, I've got these 8, these all work. Bang, that's one loop now, and now I've got space.
No, you've got
very good.
It is. Yeah, that's fun, and then you can like chisel away at those, and iterative. It's kind of like iterative music making.
Yeah,
like
knowing when a patch is finished and it's done. And then jamming it for a bit maybe, and thinking, it would be really good if you could do that bit backwards, or add elements. I do that all the time. It's like difficult to know when you've actually finished a piece of software sometimes, isn't it?
God, yeah. Well, it is kind of unending. I think I've kind of resigned myself to the fact that the flow machine, as it is it's never going to be a product. I mean, it's just I've spent a lot of time thinking about how to make that into a product. I mean, it's not to say that like the principles behind it could become a product, but like the flow machine itself, it's never going to happen, because it's so all over the place, and so it's just all over the place.
Because you sort of need a MIDI keyboard, and you need. What if you could build? Let's say you're in a world where you can just build any hardware, however it looks, and it's got automated faders and things like that. You could build a piece of hardware that would have all of those functionalities, couldn't you? And maybe replace the MIDI keyboard with just buttons instead. Yeah,
or even just like a key bed. Just get a key bed. I don't know, but I think it's more, because products have to have a certain amount of finesse to them, and to go through and really finesse the flow machine, it just take forever. I think there's probably, I don't know, I reckon if I had maybe a year or two clear, I could like finesse the flow machine into something that would really be a product that would, all the bugs would be gone, everything would sound nice, all the sort of like edge case weird things would be ironed out. And the interface would be nice, but even then it's like it's two Reactor plugins running inside Plo Bidule, and with all this kind of like weird routing, and half of it, it's a bit too much for the USB bus sometimes, so occasionally things drop out, and it's just like
I guess those things are part of its charm now a little bit. You've used it for. You've jammed with it for so long, like it's those little things you just know, and you deal with them, and you go, it's done that thing again, it's okay, I'll just go over here.
It is really like that.
Cool. It's a great machine, and I've sort of watched the development of it as a punter,
right?
And it's been great. It's been really great to see that, and so you see you still still using it and showing people it and demoing it.
It's still. I mean, I don't get that much time to kind of play out these days, but I still noodle around on it, and I've been kind of posting these little videos to Instagram at the moment, which they're not really live videos. It's kind of like getting a loop going and then just like posting a video of that loop. Little moments.
I think those are great because you get a little insight into your world. Then you get enough of it to not be enough.
Enough for it not to be enough.
Yeah.
Does
that make sense?
Yeah. I know what you mean.
Yeah, for sure. What about something that's sort of aside from music that like lifts your spirits and takes you to some, like a place away from music that you like going to?
Yeah, well, I mean, my Buddhist practice, that sort of came into my life about 7 years ago now. I mean, I'm big. I'm quite a navel gazer, so I've done lots of stuff over the years. I mean, I've had about 4 different therapists, and for very varying different lengths of time, and obviously Buddhist practice, going on retreats, silent retreats, helping out with the community, and then I had this kind of big burnout in summer last year. It's just crazy amounts of stuff going, trying to run the plugin label and launching products, and then doing this new project, which is just crazy, and that was when I kind of realised that I've got sort of an unhealthy relationship, well, quite a sort of addictive relationship to kind of busyness and success, and then trying to take things on, trying to muscle things out. So actually, I've been doing quite a lot of 12-step recovery stuff, but not for not like alcoholism or drugs, but there are other fellowships like Workaholics Anonymous and other fellowships around money and so on that take the same approach.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
Trying to kind of identify unhelpful behaviours really, and unmanageable behaviours that you're powerless over, that you just compulsively get back in. I mean, the thing that I struggle with is like compulsively getting back and getting like burnt out, or just like going crazy with stuff, and then like it all gets too much. And so that, but yeah, that kind of stuff. But then, in a way, well, that does bring serenity. The one thing that I am beginning to learn that I'm really shit at is taking holidays and actually just enjoying myself. Because I've sold my biggest hobby up the stream, So even when I'm just messing around making music, I've always got a little antenna out going like, "Ooh, can this be a product? Can this be an album? Can this be a piece of software? Whatever." So yeah, I'm actually really shit at just enjoying myself for the sake of enjoying myself. And it's something I really need to learn, because I just need to like learn to be a normal human rather than trying to be a freaking superhero all the time.
I think we all do. That's definitely something everyone's trying to be. I don't know whether it's like the influence of social media or something else that's happening in society, but yeah, everyone's trying to be like the biggest, the best, the maximise their potential in every moment, and that's quite a lot of pressure, isn't it?
Oh God, it's
that you put on yourself.
It's insipid. It's hard. Yeah, from going through this whole like being a founder thing, and listening to these podcasts, these sort of motivational podcasts, like how to do this and how to do that. There's so much bravado and so much machoism in it, and it's really unhelpful. I mean, there are very few sort of Elon Musks and Steve Jobs and so on, and that's just how it is. Like, if you're not that type of person, you're not that type of person.
Yeah,
that is how it is.
Yeah.
And if you try to be, you're just going to tie yourself in knots.
Definitely.
And I think, although on the flip side, I do see a lot more being said these days, sort of in the Twitter sphere, about like self-care and so on, and that's really encouraging. And obviously, kind of mindfulness is a very big thing nowadays. So I think it's definitely like shoots of promise. In terms of people actually being realistic about what a human life can look like, or that human life is just going to have ups and downs and peaks and troughs, and you don't. It's just unrealistic to be like an Ubermensch all the time.
Yeah. I think that it's like embracing the reality of life, and that's. It's not like, I mean, Facebook is the classic example of like somebody just being their own PR machine essentially for their personality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't do it anymore. I've really dialed back my social media.
Yeah.
Well, I
think that's a very good decision. Very good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's also in a way because I'm still in kind of well, not in hibernation mode, but there's not much. This project is just massive, and 95% of my time's going into that, so I don't really have that much to talk about either, which adds to it. But in terms of the whole, I mean, around the release of Flesh, I hired a PR person to kind of do a bit more of a kind of story around it, and she was really great. She tried really hard. I mean, she tried really hard to kind of get stories. I think it was ultimately it just wasn't really a crossover story. It was just like, oh, it's a plugin for people who make music, and it's quite nerdy. So, but anyway, I mean, she was saying you need to be posting on Facebook once every 3 days. You need to post on Twitter once a day at least, 2 or 3 times a day, and on Instagram. And then you need to be doing a mailer like once a month, and I'm just like, no. I mean, I definitely noticed that there's an effect. Like I don't, there was a time when I was just like up in everyone's feeds all the time, and you do notice that your follower numbers go up.
It's weird, that isn't it? It's like a compulsion thing, because you realise that the more you put into it, the more you're getting back from it.
Yeah.
So you're feeding the machine all the time.
Yeah, but you've got to step out of it. I think if you're working on good things and good things take time, and if you're as a human, and just on a very human level, if you're going to survive that process, then you need to take the slow path. You need to allow for like just all the life just throws shit at you, and that's how life is, and to be trying to run this massive sort of PR department that's basically trying to convince everyone else otherwise, to the detriment of everyone's well-being, really.
Exactly. That's a good point, isn't it? It's like it's bad for other people to see that you're living this plastic life of happiness. Yeah. And you're looking at it going, that's not really my life as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a very good point.
Yeah. I don't know.
The interesting thing about doing these podcasts, though, is that everyone has a view on social media, and is like, don't know if it's good anymore. Like everyone I spoke to, literally, it's come to a thing where I almost think I need to do a podcast on social media.
Yeah.
But it's a very powerful thing, isn't it? And it's sort of changed.
Well, I think the original dream of social media that was going to bring us close together has turned out to be like completely false. Yeah. And it's actually taken us further apart because now it's basically a bunch of these like avatars. We operate these avatars of basically our own sort of fears and projections about like who we ought to be. Yeah. And it's a bunch of people like trying to be who they think they ought to be, fueling this whole fire of like anxiety and sense of like social inadequacy, and it's so our time gets sucked into our phones, and the internet, and it doesn't bring people together in real spaces, and that's
absolutely the connection you have when you're with someone in real life, and something happens and it's great and you enjoy that moment, is so far from that happening on the internet, isn't it? It's like feelings and sensations are going to change because of this of those sorts of communications. It's interesting, but technology is what makes music so brilliant and makes your work so brilliant. And
well, it's use of technology. I mean, I think the technology of social media, and the idea of like real-time communication, the idea of like connecting people is potentially very liberating, and can potentially bring a huge amount of value to the world. And it's just how that technology is deployed, and probably more to the point, why is that technology being deployed? In the case of social media, it's just like, it's very much we capture your attention, then we sell it on to advertisers, which is, you know, it was never going to work. It was never going to, because the dream was like, it was sold as like, we'll bring you close together, but the actual product, but you know, the whole thing, like you're the product and your attention is being sold. So it's really, you know, it's quite a morally corrupt.
Absolutely, yeah.
Idea, but
really.
You know, the idea of like connecting people over the internet and allowing people to form communities over the internet is totally not morally corrupt. I mean, that could be a very, very powerful thing. And there are communities. I mean, you know, forums like PHP bulletin forums, which are sort of dying a bit of a death now. But some of those places were really good, genuine communities that. People who sort of met and got together online, who then formed offline communities that had like real, genuine, meaningful human connections.
Definitely. And forums are very supportive places as well. You know, if you need help with things, there's always people that are willing to help you out with your questions. I find Reddit's very good for that, and I chip in on Reddit too, because there's people that are just starting out with synths and they don't know what to buy, or they don't know which one's good, and yeah, that's quite a supportive thing. Well, thank you very much for talking to me.
It's an absolute pleasure. Yeah, thanks for listening.
And I look forward to this great big new project.
That's
going
me
to be
too.
happening.
God, me too.
Do you have any penciled in date of something to be shown?
We've got dates I'm aiming for, but I mean, I wouldn't. From past experience, I would be foolish to. Mention those in a public forum. Add 5 years.
Cool. Well, I look forward to it. I'm sure it's going to be amazing.
Well, let's see. Yeah, I think it's going to be. I'm really into it. I think.
Well, thank you very much for talking to me.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah.
Tim Exile there. What a wonderful chat that was. He's such an incredible man. It's very inspirational for a lot of people, certainly for me, for the last 10 or 15 years. He really has been at the forefront of music technology and improv performance, and pushing the boundaries of software, which I absolutely love. Great, next month I'm speaking to someone who works in community music, which is very much an unknown art form, and it's hugely beneficial to society. It's incredibly rewarding work. It can be incredibly challenging work too, but it's going to be brilliant to shed a bit of light on the community music scene. And so next month I'm speaking to a lady who works at an incredible company based in the south of England. Thank you very much for listening. My name's midierror. This is midierror Meets Podcast. I'll see you soon.